All right, well, let's get into it. I'm a bit fired up this morning. A couple things pissed me off. Number one, I got on a bit late because my cat puked in the kitchen.
Oh, okay.
I didn't notice it, and I stepped in it.
Nah, okay. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about that for sure.
Well, we don't need to talk about it that much, but
Well,
I
no,
mean,
but
what
but it
happened?
might be like a cool intro. So, Paul, I'm fired up. I stepped in cat barf today, or something like that.
Well, I think we're already into it,
Yeah.
right? Let's so anyway, I was late getting on because I stepped into the it's not a lot with the cat, and again, now we're getting into it. The cat did a little bit of a throw up. Usually after it eats, I think it eats too fast. So I stepped in it, and I was like, Jesus Christ! So I had to fix that. And the other thing too, here's a first world problem. I put too much milk into my coffee.
Oh, geez, I feel bad for you, buddy. Hey, I can definitely relate to stepping in the cat barf. I have two cats myself, and as you some listener,
Double barrel activity.
yeah, and I don't know if this was mentioned in any of the prior episodes, but growing up as a kid, we used to have a lot of cats. The my parents had a cat shed at the back of the garden, and
I
it
think
was.
we have talked about
I
that a
think
little
we
bit.
did. Yeah, this sounds like I probably have mentioned it at some point, but for those who don't know,
On the show or on in the psychiatrist chair?
well, I don't know, maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah,
But hey,
because when you say a lot of cats, what
well,
like
we're
just
we're talking about maybe 8 to 10 cats on average.
eight? Okay,
But let's
eight.
keep in mind that they most of them lived in this the shed at the back of the behind the house. We had maybe one or two cats that lived in the actual house itself. But
And did those cats that stayed in the house, they had a certain like privilege that allowed them to do that? Like,
I guess so.
what
Yeah,
made
yeah.
what was the
I'm not
difference
I'm not sure
between?
what the selection process was. Geez, this could be a topic in itself. The weird
Oh, it is. Yes.
oddities of keeping lots and lots of cats. But I should point out that the shed that the cats lived in, this was like my dad's like work shed, and this shed was fully heated.
Work as in like
Well, like
I'm assuming like
we're
tools
yeah,
and
where he
things,
kept
not like
his
office
yeah,
work.
yeah, no, where he kept his tools, and he had like a workbench and stuff like that. So it was
Okay.
sort of like a shed that was constructed for both, his tools, like a workshop area, because he would do some woodworking and stuff like that. But it was also with the idea that the cats would live in this shed, and it was a fully heated shed, and
Sure.
and
Was it built for that purpose, or he
um,
just had been using it as a tool shed and then
it
it
was
became
sort
a
of
cat shed?
built with the intent that it was going to be both.
Okay.
Yeah, that he wanted to have this,
Purpose built.
yeah, purpose built. It had um, like a I guess like an attic on the above it, so you could store stuff. So it
Hmm.
was like an extra storage shed, that type of thing. It was actually,
Heated or just its own heat, or it's like was it heated?
yeah, it was like a space heater. So yeah, during the winter
Okay.
time, the cats always had warmth. It was never
So it
like
wasn't a fire hazard at all.
I I don't know back then. Who knows?
Especially those days when heaters like got so hot, if you touched it, you'd give yourself a third degree burn.
Yeah, looking back on it now, some of those space heaters probably weren't that probably didn't have the same safety features as they do on the
Oh,
stuff
they
that you buy
didn't.
today. So
Oh, they didn't.
when
No.
you think back on it, it's almost a miracle that there wasn't some kind of a fire that went on. That would have been pretty awful. But there was no fires. Everything went very well. But hey, we're getting off topic here. We got to talk about you stepping in the cat vomit this morning, and that's something that I've done on many occasions as well. So I have experience, stepping in that, and any cat owner, the worst thing you can hear, and it's typically like 3 in the morning, and you hear it from underneath your bed is,
Yeah.
yeah, the sound of cat barfing. That'll get you up no matter what. You could be in a coma, and you could be spring out of bed after hearing that, and trying to race against time to get some kind of a tissue underneath the cat's mouth before it barfs all over the
Yeah.
carpet. Yeah, that's the worst, having to clean that up.
So fortunately, this cat normally does it on the hardwood floor
Hmm.
or the tile. So
Oh,
it's
so much easier. Yeah.
occasionally we'll do it on like one of those those throw rugs,
Hmm.
whatever we have in the living
Hmm.
room. But anyway, so that was part of my morning, and but I was honestly the thing, and I'm not really in a table of contents kind of mood here, so I'm just jumping right into this.
All right.
So I'm also a bit fired up because I've seen it more and more and more recently. And that is this prompting. And we have talked about this before, this prompting at every turn for tips.
Mm-hmm.
When you're out getting fast food, when you're out, just almost anything where you're dealing with somebody on the other side of a counter, there's this prompt for a tip. And I gotta say, it's getting on my nerves.
Absolutely, yeah. So to our listeners, if this sounds somewhat familiar, we talked about this, God, at least 6 months ago, maybe a year. We had
We
it.
were doing an outdoor episode.
Yeah,
It was. I
yeah.
know we were
So it was-
outdoors talking about this, and I think you brought this
I
topic up.
did,
back then.
yeah. I think I did. So anyway, it's been several months since we talked about it. But yeah, we did sort of discuss the concept of tipping and our thoughts on that. But yeah, we wanted to revisit this topic because I think it is worthy of revisiting because it is becoming more and more prevalent. I think several months ago I had brought it up because I think I was at a Subway or something like that, and there was when I paid by debit, you were prompted.
Subway is in the food chain.
Subway food chain. You were prompted to tip, and it was like 18. It started at like 18%, or like 18 or 21,
which is part of my issue, by the way.
Yeah, so it's the reason why we wanted to revisit this is it's become more and more prevalent. I'm seeing it more and more with a lot more fast food places these days, where it's getting to the point where almost every single retailer, well, maybe not retailers, but any kind of food place, like whether it's a sandwich shop or even a burger place, like everywhere has that tip feature, and it's getting, I don't know what's going on behind it. Like, why is this now sort of catching on so quick where you didn't really see that as much, let's say, well, pre-pandemic, obviously, but it's over the last couple years where it's trending in that direction.
Well, it did, as you mentioned, the pandemic, I think, is where we really started seeing it. That, used to see, like, because people were doing takeout more in the pandemic, and they were introducing this. I know the place up the street from here that's unfortunately since closed down had started this whole, I don't know what they called it, but like COVID service tip, which I guess at least they defined it as that. But I think all based on this shortage of workers nowadays. During COVID, I did feeling bad for people in the service industry of, the fact that a lot of them were locked down, right? So when you're actually dealing with them and the opportunity to give them a tip, it was because 3 months before that or weeks before that, you weren't even able to do anything because they were at home. So there was certainly a sympathy factor with, okay, you know what, these guys have been off, so I'm going to throw them a couple bucks for that. And I might even tip more than I would have in a normal tipping scenario because of that. So what I feel has happened here is they've just kind of kept this going, and it's now showing up everywhere, whether it's a full-fledged restaurant, which has always been the typical tipping place, or whether it's a Subway or a coffee shop. So yeah, I think that's where it really came from, was really got going during COVID, but that's over for the most part now. We're not locked down anymore. These guys are, so yeah, that's where it came from.
Yeah, and I think we lose sight of the fact that everyone is feeling the pinch. Okay, so yes, there was sympathy towards people in the service industry during COVID, during lockdowns and reduction of hours, that type of thing. But everyone is feeling the pinch in that the price of food has gone up substantially. So you're paying tip on higher priced food, and you're being asked to tip a higher percentage. Tipping.
Yeah, you mentioned it starts at 18%.
Yeah, traditionally when you go to a restaurant, it was always 15%, and I think it was 15% for years and years. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, or
if you're cheap, it was like 10%.
10% if you had like lousy service, or
you were a college student going out and buying food at a restaurant. I'm saying it because I was a 10% guy.
Yeah. But now it's beginning at 18%. So when you're prompted to leave a tip, you have to press other to type in the 15% or however much you
Yeah,
want
it's
to
like
type.
they want you to feel a little bit shameful about it.
Yeah,
Like,
like
oh, you're too cheap, so you got to go back out into the other category and drop it
yeah,
down to 15 or whatever.
or in order to tip 15%, there's more steps to be able to do that, as
Yeah.
opposed to just the
Barrier to
convenience.
entry.
Yeah,
Create barriers to
Well, and the other reason I wanted to revisit this is because recently I just came back from vacation. I spent 2 weeks in the UK. And
yes, there's been a lot of travel actually.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
So in the UK, it was it's a very different tipping culture in the sense that there isn't really any tipping. Like when you go to a restaurant, there is a 10% service, like a 10% tip that's applied to your bill, and it's already there, and it is optional if you wish to remove it. If you had, let's say, really bad service, then you could remove it. But typically, yeah, they charge, it's 10% added to your bill, and you just pay it, and you don't have to think about it. And I think that's a great way to do it. I think that's a very reasonable amount. It's less hassle for the consumers, for the customers.
Now wait, so in the pubs, like I know when you go to a pub, you typically would walk up to the bar and order your
yeah, and that's
drinks,
the
right?
other thing. When you go to a pub, you order at the bar. You don't necessarily have table service, so you order from the bar. You might tip £1 or £2, but it's not really expected that you would tip very much at a pub. You know what? And actually, I thought that was kind of a good way to do it because, you know, you just go up and get your food. Like you don't necessarily have to be waited on, especially if it's a pub where it's a more casual environment. You know, I got my own legs. I can walk up and get my own, you know, pint of beer or order my own food or whatever.
And if you don't want that, then you go to a sit-down restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I thought that, you know, in the UK, they had it right in the sense that, you know, for their tax, it's included in the price. So you're not paying additional tax on anything. So you don't even see the cost of the tax. And I just think that it's much more geared to the customer, to the consumer. That's the way it should be. But here it's like, you know, you pay 15% or 18% is what you're expected. And you're paying that tip based on the total amount. So that includes the tax. So you're tipping based on the tax as well. That's what a lot of people don't realize. So you should be tipping on the subtotal. So now, yeah, if you're going to a lot of places and they're asking for 18%, in some ways you're kind of tipping more like 20% because that 18% is on the full amount, which includes tax.
Okay, so I did want to make one point about this that fires me up. A couple things actually is that. Yeah, you mentioned the whole thing that you're prompted at the 18. Well, so I tried to go so I went to a coffee shop, got a coffee, and I thought, you know what? I just want to give this person 50 cents. And I tried to go into there'll be the selection for dollar amount or percent. So I went to dollar amount and I tried to type 0.50 and it wouldn't let me put a decimal point in. So that irritated me.
So it has to be at least $1 then, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now, granted, you could, and I figured this out after as well. Actually, if I just leave a 10% tip on a $4 coffee or whatever, then it would be 40 cents, or 15% would be, 58, 60 cents, whatever. So in hindsight, I can do that now. Is just use the percentage button. But that was one thing. But the thing that really irked me is my brother-in-law, who was on this podcast recently, the pilot, he mentioned that he was also getting irritated by this and asked one of the merchants, or the service people, I should say, hey, by the way, this tip, does that go back to the staff or does that go to, who gets this? Do you get this tip? And the person, it was like an Indian restaurant or something, like a fast foodish sort of place, and said, no, that goes back to the owner. So that irks me, is that if I'm going to look at this person across the other side of the counter and feel sort of like, hey, they did a good job, or if I feel bad because they've been off during COVID and all that, but actually it's not even going to that person, it's going to the owner of the establishment.
Yeah, that's a great point. That again, it's a thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that Yeah, you pay. You're paying this amount for tip, and traditionally, it's always thought, well, especially at a restaurant, that it would go directly to your waiter or
Yes.
waitress, whatever. But yeah, that's not necessarily the case. You're right. That could be going to the owner, in which case it's up to their discretion as to how they would divvy that up amongst their staff. Keep in mind that the minimum wage, at least certainly here in Ontario, and I think most other provinces in Canada and probably a lot of U.S. states, minimum wage has gone up quite a bit over the last couple of years. So obviously, when minimum wage goes up, then it's the employer that has to pay that. They might be taking that tip money to offset the cost of the fact that they're having to pay higher wages. So yeah, that's definitely something to factor in. Like, you don't really know where that tip money is going to.
And you and I have talked about this before. In general, I think I said, wouldn't, if you get a chance, ask a few places whether or not they are where the tip goes. And I didn't get a chance to do it. I don't know if you had a chance to ask.
No, nor did I. But I will ask, because yeah,
Let's
I
ask.
think
Let's come back to this.
Yeah, we'll provide an update on that in a future episode for sure.
Oh, okay. So, Paul, you embarked on I guess you called it, what was it? Dry February.
Yeah.
A month you chose dry, meaning not drinking alcohol.
Mhm.
And I'm really curious about this. I've done some dry months myself, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about how the experience went. This is that was just prior to your trip, I think, to England, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, yeah.
Tell me about this. Why did you Why did you do Dry February? Let's start with that. Why did you do that?
We did it because my wife and I did it together. We did it
And your
because
son.
yeah.
Your 12-year-old son now? Is he 12?
Yeah, he's 12. Yeah, he's not boozing it up, so don't worry about that. Yeah, we did it because we saw the advertisements. It was probably around Christmas time. There's commercials advertising the Dry February campaign.
Brought to you by Smirnoff Vodka.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Dry February.
Yeah. Yeah, have some Smirnoff the moment you're done.
Okay, so who was advertising it? Like,
so this is for Canadian Cancer Society. So yeah, this is a full out like a fundraiser. And it's a fundraiser pledge, so that people, the intent behind it is to promote, I guess, healthy habits, to try to educate people on, I guess, the potential health risks when it comes to drinking. But
that was what it was linked to.
Yeah, but most importantly, it's to act as a fundraiser for Canadian cancer, because obviously, excessive drinking can lead to various forms of cancer, pancreatic. I'm not
liver,
I'm
sure.
Liver. I'm not a doctor, so I'm sure there's many others, and I'm sure someone in the medical community would have more to say on that. But
it hasn't stopped us from having an opinion we have no right giving. But I'm glad you put that caveat in there.
Anyway, the point being is that, yeah, we decided, hey, let's do this Dry February. Let's prove it to ourselves that we can do this, because we've always kind of talked about, oh yeah, let's go a little while without drinking. And it became sort of a mission. And, my wife and I are not, I was going to say heavy drinkers. We're not heavy drinkers. We're not even big drinkers at all. We have an occasional drink on weekends, more so like social drinking. At least that's kind of maybe what we thought. Anyway, we're like, yeah, let's do this Dry February. We've been all gung ho. And we did it. We succeeded. We went a full 28 days. I think they do it in February because
there's only 28 days.
It's only 28 days.
Sometimes 29.
Yeah, and it's enough of a break from Christmas. I think by the time February rolls around, people are kind of ready to kind of detox a little bit after, various like Christmas and New Year's celebrations and all of that kind of stuff. So
well, I have heard some people use January, but there's 31 days in January. So I think the February 28 day thing probably is a bit of a makes it a bit easier, sadly, for
It does,
some.
yeah. It probably is an easier sell because typically people don't really have a lot of stuff going on in February, or so we
True.
thought. It's one of those things where you don't realize that what you do have going on in February. Um, we actually had a couple of birthday parties and a few events that we went to, and it's like, man, this is a little bit tougher than what we thought it was going to be.
So what
Well, okay,
what was
so
tough?
just because you're in a setting, or you're, let's say, at a hockey game or something, and you're like, it'd be nice to have a beer in my hand right now, but it's like, no, can't do it. You got to have a little bit of willpower there. Um,
What
you're in a situation where normally you would probably have a drink, and now you have to train yourself to say, no, I can't have it.
Well, and
So
that's the whole thing too, right? Is
yeah,
so much of this, because I've gone through this experience before as well. Um, so much of it is the social prompting, because it's always been that way factor, i.e., ball game and a hot dog, or
yeah,
beer
yeah,
and a hot dog, I should say, at a ball
yeah.
game. So we get this sort of socialization factor going on, and
Yeah.
yeah, but who says we have to have a beer at a ball
Well,
game, or a beer at a birthday, or a wine, or whatever? Like,
no,
I'm
no,
not
yeah,
accusing you of anything. I'm just saying, like, what where did this come from? It's just muscle memory, I think,
it
half of it.
is. Well, yeah, that's a great question because we do this to ourselves where you're at a ball game and you're like, yeah, I should have a beer in hand. Well, do you really need a beer in hand? No, it's just something that you have in your mind, or maybe it's just you're used to having it. Something you would consume at an event, or some kind of a function that you're at, or a sporting event, whatever it might be. It's just something that is sort of you're used to. So when you're like, okay, I can't go grab a beer, it's like it seems a bit different. So I should point out that one of the things that did keep us going is that we did try some of the non-alcoholic beers, and some of them are really good. Like you
Mm.
would not really notice a huge difference the fact that there's no alcohol in it. So like for example, Heineken, they make a really good non-alcoholic beer, and
Would you describe it as really good, or more like it's really not as
it's
bad as the others?
well, you know what, it's. I'm sure if you did a blind taste test, you would be able to determine which is the real stuff and which isn't. But it's a good substitute. Like if you are used to having that can of beer in your hand, then having a non-alcoholic Heineken did the trick, and it succeeded in being able to stay true to your commitment to this dry February. So yeah, that's what we did, is that we bought a couple of the non-alcoholic beers, and that kept us going, and that really it was a sense of pride, sense of accomplishment, and being able to say that, yeah, we did it, like going a full month without drinking. And it made you realize that, yes, you can do it. In that a lot of people be like, oh, I can never give up beer or never give up wine. Well, we did it for a month, and yeah, I missed it a little bit, but I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would. And that was pretty huge in itself. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was a great lesson, and something that, as I said, a sense of accomplishment for yourself, but also sort of a teachable moment in terms of knowing that, yeah, you can, if there's things you can live without, it can be done.
Okay, so a few things. How much social pressure did you feel by the people you were going to the birthday parties for when it came to you not drinking?
Actually, there wasn't any social pressure. Like once you explain what you're doing, everyone's like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a good idea.
Now, wait,
And
because it's a charity?
yeah, I guess that helped. Like
I bet it did.
yeah, we explained what we're doing. We're doing this, dry February commitment. But if you weren't doing it, let's say if it wasn't for charity and you just wanted to go dry for a month, um, yeah, you might have some comments to say, come on, have a beer, that type
I
of
think
thing.
you would.
I
In
think you
fact,
would, yeah.
I did. So a couple times I've done this. One time when I was trying to get into the police force, which was
Long, long time ago.
10 plus years ago, I was looking for a different career, and I had to get fit and ready for the physical testing for that. And I decided to go, I think it was the month of July because the test was in August without drinking. And it was incredible how many times I would get things like, oh, like everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but wait, you guys have no idea why I'm not drinking. So,
Yeah.
and what I don't need you to say, well, it's okay if I do, as long as I don't do it too much. Like, butt out, right? Mind your own
Yeah.
business. But I did that. I think I had a couple of cocktail events I had to go to for work. That's when this happened. Because we were out for dinner after and they were ordering bottles of wine. And that's when I said, oh, I won't be any part of the decision around what you guys want to order because I'm not drinking. Oh, why not? Like, the nosiness, and I do believe that some people get their backs up a little bit about it. It's like, well, you're better than us. Like, I got that sense. No one ever said that, but I think when someone says they don't drink, especially if it's always like they just don't drink, I get the sense that bothers some people.
Do you think attitudes have changed a little bit over the years? Like, I think there's more awareness. Like 20 years ago, like when you and I first started off in the insurance industry, it was very, how do I put this? It was very
encouraged.
It was encouraged. Yeah. Like there was
Badge of honor.
A lot of socializing, like stumbling in for the 9 o'clock bell with 3 sheets to the wind, that type of thing.
See if
like
you could get up, be in there on time.
And like it was
a badge of honor to be able to not only drink a lot, but to survive it too. Be in the office the next day.
How much you could drink? Like, did pound back 6 beers and not feel it and be like, yeah, that guy knows how to drink. You know, it was a sense of pride.
It was.
As I said, it's not that long ago, but now I know that things are very different. I think there's a lot more people have decided to stop drinking. A lot of it could be for medical reasons or because of addiction issues, and that's very important reasons in itself.
We're also getting older too, so there's now health is different at 50-ish than it is at 24, right? So yes, definitely the awareness is up, and just quickly on that thing, going back to I remember when I started working, the guy I worked with, he said to me, Clark, you're going to be doing a lot of drinking in this job, not on the job, but in the job. It'll be after work, at lunches. So on the job, I guess.
Yeah.
And he said, your friends will begin to look at you like your friends in your private life. Well, you'll be at a party on a Saturday and your friends will be just amazed that you'll be able to drink so much and not show any effects of it. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I bought totally into it. But yeah, the difference, I don't think you would hear that now. I think in general, drinking over lunch at work, it's not really done so much. Maybe one beer, but going and getting a bottle or 2 of wine over lunch and then going back to the office, that was normal back like in my dad's generation for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
A little bit of the time
in the
beginning of my career. So yeah, things have changed for sure.
Yeah. So getting back, it was a great experience in that, I learned a lot about myself, and I guess I taught myself the fact that yes, I can go a full month. Now, if you ask me to go dry during the month of July or August, okay, maybe we got a little bit of a different story there, because I think the pressure.
Baseball games on Sunday, we both play. And after the game, a big part of it is going out to the parking lot. You're always the one bringing the cooler of beers. We've all pitched in for it. Yeah. And then we're cracking those in the parking lot.
Am I an enabler here?
It's not you.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, but everyone wants it. We're
all playing, and maybe it's a bad game or a good game, and we're like, at least we got those beers after to.
Yeah. It would be really, really tough to go dry during the summertime when there's so many like barbecues, and as I said, we got our slow pitch team. But hey, there's people on our team that are dry, that don't have.
That's right. We do have a guy that has a Pepsi or whatever, and or water, and nobody gives him the gears. He's also one of the older guys on the team, and probably seen as more of a not authority figure, but no one's going to give him the gears for it, right?
Yeah.
So a couple things, and I want to move on because we said we're only going to do 10 minutes on this, but I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you or have you ever felt somewhat or slightly embarrassed when you bring your empties back to the beer store to get your deposit back. And I don't mean to get the deposit back, but do you feel a little sheepish carting those things into the back car? Maybe neighbors will see all the bottles and judge you. Have you ever had that feeling?
Actually, that's a good question. No, not really. But yeah, actually, you raise a good point about. Okay, so just to back up a little bit here, so I accumulate my empties, and typically every 6 months or oops, sorry, I banged my microphone.
Have you been drinking?
No. Okay, so every 6 months or so, I'll take the empties back to the beer store. Now, I should point out, like what we just mentioned previously about the about having the post game beers for the softball team. I collect the empties after every game.
Oh yeah, so you're collecting like 20.
Yeah,
25
so usually I've got
from the 15 guys that are at the game, or 12
yeah,
guys.
Usually after a game we'll kill a case of beer, so I'm bringing back a lot of empties after every week. So that accumulates a lot. So for example, I went to the liquor, I dropped off a bunch of empties. This was about maybe 6 weeks ago to the beer store, and I had about $30 worth, so about 300 empties. So that would include wine bottles and beer bottles and cans and whatever.
That's a lot.
So yeah, it is a lot, but no, I don't feel kind of sheepish or anything, because trust me, some of the people that walk into the beer store returning empties, that's what they've accumulated in a weekend, and they'll have like 300 units, which is pretty sad. But no, actually, I think it's kind of cool showing up to the beer store and seeing how much you can accumulate, and to walk out of there with like $30-$40 in your pocket.
But you see, there's a good example. Like it's kind of neat. Like kind of neat. Why?
Well, it's because you have all these empties and you walk out of there with $40.
Okay, not because it's like a badge of honor that they'll say, "Wow, this guy drinks a lot."
No, not anymore. Because hey, you could have empties for any reason. You might own a restaurant or have a fundraising barbecue for all they know. And there's no judgment on the beer store employees, because I'm sure they see a lot of weird stuff going on in there. But yeah, it's kind of cool when you can accumulate so many empties and you walk out of there with a bunch of money in your pocket that you didn't have before. So, yeah, that doesn't bother me.
The reason why I brought that up is because in Japan, you don't return your empties to the beer store or liquor store. You just put them out in the recycling. Yeah. And there were times, like my neighbor and I, we had our stuff next to each other. We had we were on the street level, like we put our stuff out on the curb, literally.
Yep. And
I do recall a few times looking at his stash of stuff, like, and there was a little bit of a looking at the wines bottles that were there, and thinking, yeah, those are good. Those are good bottles of wine. Like those are expensive, and and I was looking at my collection, and not necessarily thinking mine wasn't, but it was. I'm thinking, like we are probably both, at least for a split second, laying some type of judgment on one another when we look at each other's recycling. How much was there, what was there? Yeah, it just crossed my mind for a second. But yeah, like we don't have that in so much in Canada, because we bring it to a special facility, i.e. the beer store.
Yeah, and
to return our empties.
Yeah, it's like 10 cents a can, or like 20 cents for a wine bottle, that type of thing. So it's a good way to recycle and get some money back as well. But yeah, so if you're looking at your neighbor's recycling box and it's entirely filled with wine bottles, would there be a little bit of judgment? Maybe.
Yes, there would be some type of judgment.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. All right, you got some weird news, Paul. What have you found?
Okay, so have you ever heard of slap fighting?
Is that sort of like where you sort of stand on the back of you do this, like a kind of a Three Stooges sort of thing?
Okay, so slap fighting, so it's where you have, there's two contestants in you stand stationary, and basically it's like a stationary slap, like you're slapping someone on the side of the head.
Okay, and can they stop it, or is the idea you have to allow it to be slapped?
No, you have to allow it to be slapped. Okay. So basically you slap your opponent, and to the point where either they collapse or they give up or something like that.
Wait, is it alternating? Like you slap them, then they slap you?
Yes. Or? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should include a YouTube link or something. What it looks like on our show notes.
We should do an episode like that where we do a slap fight.
Yeah. Like I've seen clips of it, like on some of the weird Facebook videos or on like
You didn't think that was a good idea, the slap fight episode?
yeah. Anyway, I brought this up as weird news because apparently this slap fighting, it's becoming viral. Like the slap fighting videos are going viral, and it's actually to the point where it's being looked at as the next big combat sport. Apparently the UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, so the commissioner Dana White, he has actually shown interest in backing this, in sort of being supporting this is sort of like a mainstream sport or activity that would sort of be run in conjunction with the UFC fighting. So yeah, this is, I thought this was pretty weird because I just thought it was just kind of like, just a strange phenomenon, but apparently there's professional leagues out there and there's starting to be a lot of money being thrown into this sport where now there's some major competitions and there's some pretty significant prize monies being offered. So there's people that, and keep in mind these are pretty big dudes that are signing up for this, that are now becoming professional slap fighters. And I just thought this was really kind of interesting and probably something that a lot of people didn't know about.
No, I didn't. The listeners may have heard of this, but I did kind of Google this as you were talking there. And yeah, they got it looks like I see Dana White. Like, well, first of all, what got you? Did you just see, because there was an article that says that Dana White, slap fighting turns head as Dana White looks to make it and it's cut off. But is that what prompted it, or you just heard about it?
Yeah, no, I've seen some of the videos before, just thinking that it's something completely silly. But the more I'm seeing these videos, I'm like, wow, this is actually a real thing. Like as I said, there's formal competitions and there's like, national tournaments taking place in Vegas. And
how long does a typical fight last?
That I'm not sure. I haven't really witnessed an entire competition or anything.
Some of these dudes can take pain, so. Like, you look at UFC fighting, and you're like, holy smoke! One punch to the nose, and I'd be like gone. Like, is there a part of the face you're allowed to hit or not hit? Or
yeah, it looks like there is definitely rules in place, and it's probably based on like weight class as well. Because there's people usually it's pretty big guys that are involved in this, but I think even women are involved in this as well.
I saw that.
So yeah, it's one of those things where it's this new combat sport, and there's a lot of concerns over the CTE, which is the repeated brain trauma that we've seen in contact sports such as football.
Yeah.
They're wondering what are the long-term effects from a safety standpoint, in terms of potential brain damage or cognitive issues down the road. But, I guess depending on how much money is involved, I bet you the participants don't really care about that. That they're just in it for the prize money and to sort of
slap me silly,
make a name for themselves as a professional slapper. So there you go. You should, to our listeners, check it out. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if, you'll be fascinated or repulsed. I don't know. It depends. But it's kind of weird and it's pretty interesting.
Well, that's it, Paul. It's been a long time since we've done an episode. So we definitely need to, as we always say, not let so much time pass. But I have a feeling that we'll get the next episode out much faster, and catch up on a few of our travels, because that's both of us have been traveling around a bit in the last couple of months, and I do on the next episode want to talk a little bit about traveling with family or with other families, and whether you've had some experience doing that and has it been positive, because I just came back from a trip where I traveled with my brother-in-law and his family. So let's talk about that on our next episode.
For sure. Sounds good.